George Russell has finally made it to Mercedes, but it's no accident. His junior career leading up to his Formula One days were stellar. When did Russell turn down Toto Wolff? And which move on the final race of the season made his career? Stay tuned, because all of that and more is coming right up. Williams and Mr. Saturday. After years of grinding away in the junior categories, in 2019, young George Russell was finally given a spot with the Formula One team with Williams. Williams have won 7 drivers' championships with legends like Nigel Mansell, Alan Prost, and Damon Hill. Unfortunately for George, though, the glory days of Williams were long gone. By 2019, they had been coming for years. Claire Williams was still at the head of the team that her father Frank had started, but the money just wasn't there. The team was going through financial difficulties, and it was eventually sold to a U.S. investment firm. George had definitely come at the wrong time. He didn't score any points in 2019 and finished last on the grid. Not exactly a great start, but he couldn't do much about the poor performance of Williams. But he consistently outqualified his teammate Nicholas Latifi in every single race last season. This performance during qualifying earned him the nickname Mr. Saturday. Russell has said that he loves the excitement of producing the fastest lap possible, and the pressure only helps him perform better. Looking at the gaps between teammates helps make it clear that Russell is on the same level as Hamilton and Verstappen. His qualifying laps have the same gap to his teammate as Hamilton and Verstappen have with their teammates. For a while, it looked like there was no space for George to move up to a top team like Mercedes, and that he would never achieve his dreams. It didn't matter how consistently he raced with a Williams, he just wasn't seeing the results. Without a good car, he might have never had a chance to prove what he was capable of. Sakir Grand Prix. But then, at the 2020 Sakir Grand Prix, George got that chance to show just how dangerous he can be. He was lucky and unlucky. He was lucky because, before the race, Lewis Hamilton got COVID and was ruled out of competing. But one man's loss is another man's gain. And that man was George Russell. He got to drive the Mercedes in a race weekend for the first time in his life. The weekend got off to a good start. He looked good in practice and qualified second behind teammate Valtteri Bottas. On just the first lap, he overtook Bottas and looked likely to win the race after extending his lead. Then came the unlucky part. After a safety car, disaster struck. Mercedes called George into the pits but fitted his car with mismatched tires. This is Mercedes, the top team in Formula One. To have mismatched tires is illegal in F1, so that meant that George had to pit again. Still though, Russell managed to recover. He was in 5th place and started making up places until eventually he was in 2nd place, just behind Sergio Perez. But when the race win looked closer than ever, he got a bit more bad luck. A puncture of one of his tires ruined his race, and he ended up down in 9th. Mercedes was impressed by Russell, but he was gutted. The team had been the most reliable the entire season, and as soon as George got in the car, it all fell apart. Talk about bad luck. George will be hoping that this isn't some kind of Mercedes curse. When did George Russell turn down an offer from Mercedes boss Toto Wolff, and how did he manage to finish 2nd place in a Williams? Don't go anywhere, because all of that is coming up. Russell is trouble for Hamilton. Hamilton had a pretty smooth relationship with his last teammate. Valtteri Bottas was willing to take one for the team and help Lewis whenever he needed it. It might have been easier for Bottas to fit into this role because he was never that competitive with Hamilton. Compared to Hamilton, his performances were a little disappointing. In 2017, Hamilton won 9 races, while Bottas won 3. The next year, the gap was huge. Hamilton won 11 races, while Bottas didn't win any. After leaving Mercedes last year, Valtteri said that Lewis is a living legend, and that sometimes when Valtteri was at his best, he could beat him. But Lewis is so good because he is consistently at such a high level. With George Russell, there may be more competition here. He was very consistent in the last 2 years, even in a Williams that was stuck at the back for most of the season. 2-time world champion Emerson Fittipaldi has said that he expects Russell to be aggressive in challenging Lewis this year. Team boss Toto Wolff has said that he sees a lot of similarities between the Hamilton-Russell partnership and the Hamilton-Alonso partnership in 2007. That was Lewis's rookie year, and he outperformed the veteran 2-time world champion Fernando Alonso to come runner-up in the championship. Alonso was so bruised by the battle that he left the team the next year, and Hamilton won his first world championship. Could Toto be saying that George Russell is the new Lewis? If George outperforms Lewis, he might be sending Hamilton to an early retirement. He's fast in anything. Even in the Williams car, George Russell has been able to get some impressive results. At the 2021 Belgium Grand Prix, the conditions looked tricky with heavy rainfall throughout the weekend. The qualifying session was delayed, but when it resumed, George Russell shocked everyone. He cruised from Q1 and Q2, posting times more than a second quicker than some of his rivals, and he was near the top of the timesheet. Nobody could quite believe what they were seeing. A Williams car at the top of the table? Surely not. But in the final session of qualifying, he put in the fastest lap that was beaten only by Max Verstappen's Red Bull. This was the best performance bounced by a Williams car in the last 5 years. Mr. Saturday had done it again. But George knew that this was just the start of a difficult weekend, and qualifying can be very different to a race. Over 70 laps, it would be difficult to hold the two Mercedes cars and the rest of the pack behind him. Then there was another stroke of good luck. The wet weather had helped him in qualifying, and now it looked like it would help him during the race. The car started behind a safety car because of the conditions, but after 2 laps, the rain wasn't stopping and the race was canceled. This meant that George finished in second place. He only got half points for his troubles, but it was still the most points he had ever earned. It was one of the 4 races that he won points that season, ending in a respectable 15th place. The best junior career. Like all modern Formula One drivers, it all started with karting for George. He was just 7 years old when he picked up the hobby before entering competitions just a year later. He was the Motorsport Association British Champion, the Super 1 British Champion, and the Formula Kart Stars Champion. Geez, George, leave some races for the rest of the kids. It was no surprise that he graduated to single-seater racing before too long. He continued his winning streak and won the 2014 Formula 4 Championship, the GP3, and Formula 2. That's basically every competition there is on the way up to Formula 1. And the story behind each win is pretty unbelievable. Even in a season that he didn't win, Russell was able to prove himself. He was stuck with an uncompetitive team after Lawrence Stroll had stopped him from joining the top Prima team. But in the finale, one driver for the Tech 1 team pulled out at the last minute, and Russell got to step in for him. He ended up winning the race over Nick de Vries, who had already won the championship. Then to win the Formula 4 title, he needed to overtake his season-long rival, who had crashed into him twice before. Russell has called the overtake a career-making move. George was on fire, and he even turned down an offer for sponsorship from Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff. That's right, he turned down the boss of the most powerful team in Formula 1. It was a sponsorship for the European F3 series, and Russell instead decided to go with the Carlin team. Then, after testing with BMW, he was offered a chance to compete in DTM, which is a German racing league. Before he could answer, he got a call from Mercedes and offered a different path. It wasn't a surefire thing, but George was willing to gamble with the Mercedes option, and it paid off. He was accepted into Mercedes' Young Driver program, and his path to F1 was assured. What's the moral of the story? Never say no to Toto Wolff. Did you know about how impressive Russell was in his junior career, and how do you think he will stack up against Hamilton? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.